which is fine. It's probably in the other meeting, but the words aren't there. Yeah. That's been. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I was hoping not to get a text. All right, we are live on Rogers TV, on Sioux Today, and on the city's YouTube page. Welcome, bienvenue en ligne. I'd like to begin our meeting in a good way, as we do, by acknowledging with respect that we are in Robinson here on treaty territory and that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and known as Ba-Wa-Ting. Ba-Wa-Ting is home to Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. Madam Clerk.
Item 2, approve agenda as presented. I have a motion by Councillors Dufour and Gardy. Resolve that the budget agenda for November 17th, 2025 as presented be approved.
All in favor? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest, Council? Saying none. Item 4.
Just note that a mayoral direction with respect to the 2026 budget was signed on September 22nd, 2025.
This is to comply with the Strong Mayor Legislation Council that requires that I direct staff to give the budget within a certain period of time. So we play this charade where we technically comply by carrying out the same process that we've always carried out.
Item 5, 2026 proposed budget. And we have a presentation or introduction remarks from the CAO and then a presentation from Finance and Communications.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Staff are pleased to present the preliminary budget for 2026. The budget has been carefully prepared by staff, recognizing budget pressures and community challenges that are anticipated this coming year. At a high level, the budget proposes a budget increase of 1.89% for the city level levy and local and levy boards at 3.5% for a total municipal levy increase at 5.39% at this time. The increase to the OMPF fund was of great assistance to the city in helping to reduce the increase to the budget, and we're appreciative of this funding from the province. We do have a recommended increase to winter control budgets of approximately $950,000, which is an important step to properly fund winter control expenses and in years with lighter snowfall, reestablish winter control reserves in the future. Staff developed the 2026 budget with economic factors facing the community in mind. Council will note that requests for service level changes have been pared down significantly to include only those items referred to budget from council reports in 2025 and items requested by council. There's only one staff complement change being brought forward in 2026 with no levy impact, although requests for additional complement were made by departments within the budget process. I'll now turn it over to the CFO to walk us through.
Good evening. Today, the 2026 preliminary operating, capital, and sanitary rate supported budgets are provided for the information of council. The budgets are a financial guide on how tax dollars will be spent while balancing the maintenance of the current service levels with the tax burden. The 2026 municipal budget reflects a year of significant financial strain driven by persistent cost pressures across core service areas. Despite rigorous efforts to contain expenditures and optimize operational efficiency, the municipality faces a high tax levy requirement to maintain service levels and meet statutory obligations. To address the pressures, the 2026 budget focuses on the preservation of core services and avoiding service cuts, strategic investments in funding capital projects that support the maintenance of the core services, debt management that ensures the responsible borrowing, and maintains the city's credit rating. Next slide, please. Budget presentation includes a discussion on the budget landscape and some of the challenges, followed by a summary of the various budgets. Next slide. Let's look at some of the metrics that impact the budget landscape. Assessment. So you're on the wrong slide. There should be an assessment right there. Thank you. Assessment growth during the year provides additional net tax revenue to the municipality. The growth results from new builds, expansions, assessment corrections and revisions, and is offset by tax write-offs and assessment reductions. The growth, it is unrelated to market value changes, which do not translate into growth or loss, but only redistribute the tax burden. Assessment growth as of October 2025 is 0.04%, as compared to 0.94% or almost a full 1% in 2024. There was significant growth of 3.32% reflected in the municipal residential class, but large assessment appeals settled in 2025 have negated it, leaving the net municipal revenue growth to date as slightly negative. It is anticipated that the future years will reflect higher municipal growth with the focus on Ontario's housing targets and incentives, along with the completion of several large multi-residential projects. Next slide, please. The municipal tax burden from the 2024 BMA study is a metric that ensures the city is not burdening the residents beyond what they can pay or the norm in the province. The results are consistent with previous years in that Sault Ste. Marie has one of the lowest tax burdens amongst our northern comparators. Sault Ste. Marie ranks as mid-range for the entire survey group, while other northern comparators reflected on the graph are all ranked as high. Affordability, as well as local economic conditions, provide a general guideline for determining a reasonable municipal levy increase for the budget year. The city continues to face local economic challenges and cost increases, all of which put additional pressure on the city's budget and the revenue needed to support it. The budgets in the coming years will continue to depend on property tax increases exceeding historical averages until the municipal funding model undergoes a significant evolution. Balancing affordability with what the community is willing to pay and the level of service that residents have come to rely on is becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. Next slide. The discretionary reserves as a percentage of own source revenue measure is a strong indicator of financial stability. It is a critical component of long-term financial planning, as a strong ratio enhances flexibility in addressing operating requirements and in permitting temporary funding of capital projects internally. Sault Ste. Marie is higher than our 5-year average, which is noted in red, indicating that the level of reserves is growing. Municipalities establish reserve and reserve funds for a variety of purposes that may include financing of capital projects for either new assets or maintaining and or improving current assets, stabilization of future operating expenses for some municipal services, such as the winter control reserve, manage anticipated or contingent liabilities, maintain a level of liquidity and cash for sound financial planning. Many of the city's reserves do not have sufficient annual allocations in their operating budget to satisfy or sustain the asset replacement requirements. The city's long-term financial plan provides for annual increases to continue growing the reserve levels and provide sustainable funding for future capital requirements. The plan for the 2026 budget was a 1.3% levy increase, but with other budget pressures to maintain service levels, only an inflationary increase was added along with the approved Public Works Fleet final annual increase approved by Council. This results in a total capital reserve levy increase of approximately 0.7%. The shortfall from the long-term financial plan to grow capital reserves may increase the risk of not being able to maintain or replace assets at the required service levels, Future budget forecasts will increase the levy for reserve transfers up to 2% to provide for capital requirements within the 10-year long-term financial plan. Next slide, please. The city's forecasted long-term debt will peak at $104 million in 2027, with debt servicing of approximately $8.6 million. This reflects a decrease from the 2025 estimate of $129 million due to the receipt of a substantial grant for the West End Plant Phase 2 project. Major external debt requirements included in the forecast are the West End Plant Phase 2 with a total project estimate of 57.5 million with debt of 33.6 million, and the Biosolids Management Facility with a total project estimate of 67 million with a debt estimate of 48.2. Other near-term capital requirements not included in the debt forecast are the landfill site improvements and expansion for $12 million, and that is all projected to be debt financed, and as well the GFL Memorial Gardens roof replacement for $7 million, again, all projected to be debt financed. The calculated debt servicing limit is $11.6 million, leaving approximately $40 million additional debt capacity based upon a 20-year amortization. Including the other near-term projects, approximately $20 million of additional debt is available. Internally financed debt is at or slightly exceeds the limit established within the city's policies until 2029. It is strongly recommended that council not take on any significant additional long-term debt other than the projects noted until the final estimates for the two major projects are ascertained, as they will impact the long-term debt capacity. Next slide, please. There are several challenges that continue to impact the city's ability to maintain the current level of service. The current municipal funding model relies on property taxation. The city will struggle to maintain the affordability of property taxes as high costs in such areas as police services put additional pressure on the levy. The asset management plan requirements, as set out earlier this year to council, continues to reflect infrastructure deficits. Additional investment is required to mitigate the risks of assets further deteriorating or failing, resulting in service level reductions. Assessment growth is being impacted by large commercial and industrial sector appeals. This is reducing the positive impact of the growth in the multi-residential sector. As focus on the housing targets continues, though, assessment should start reflecting a higher growth. The city has been very fortunate in the number and amount of dollars received for various projects over the last several years. There is a risk that this level of funding may not be maintained in future years, thus placing an additional burden on the municipal tax levy or requiring service level adjustments. This concludes the presentation of the budget landscape. I will now turn it over to Mr. Facey to provide a summary of the various 2026 budgets.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council. The proposed operating budget includes total expenditures of $237 million for 2026. This is the amount to deliver all city services, including salaries and benefits, contractual services, contractual obligations, annual contributions to reserves and capital, as well as the implications of our outside boards and service partners. The capital budget itself, which is comprised of larger one-time expenditures, totals $47.8 million, which reflects a $3 million increase from 2025. In total, the year-over-year budget change is tabled at 5.39% as for the property tax levy increase. Municipal services equate to approximately 1.89%, with the remaining 3.5% from our service partners. Next slide, please. Inflationary pressures continue to impact city services and specific expenditures. The inflationary increase for 2026 is in line with previous years. And similar to 2025, 2026 includes an injection of funds for Public Works fleet replacement of nearly $500,000. It's also being recommended to invest additional funds into the city's winter control program, as it's been underfunded for a number of years. These funds are recommended in order to maintain the existing service levels within winter control. And lastly, the 2026 budget includes the impacts associated with the city's service partners and reflects a significant portion of the tax levy increase for 2026. Next slide, please. In accordance with the Municipal Act, the city is required to present a balanced budget. This means the sum of all expenses, net of other revenues, totals the municipal tax levy. In other words, the city cannot budget for a surplus or deficit. We must budget appropriately for the estimated cost of delivering services. The first step is to determine the total cost of what is required to deliver all services, and then offset by other revenues such as government grants and user fees. The difference between the two form the municipal tax levy. And for 2026, it's approximately $154 million. Next slide, please. The city's expenditures increase over time to maintain and account for new service levels. Consistent with other municipalities, a significant portion of the operating budget are staffing costs. Of the $237 million applicable to city services, nearly half are staffing costs. And specific to city operations, operating increases include the additional investment into public works, winter control averaging, as well as increased budgets for various repairs and maintenance to account to reflect the true cost of delivering city services. Next slide, please. Other revenues, as mentioned previously, are the offset to municipal expenditures and when calculating the tax levy. And these revenues include grants such as the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund that reduce property tax pressures on residents. And the OMPF grant that the municipality received in 2026 reflects a 13% increase over the 2025 amount. And then user fees account for nearly half of all other revenues and are calculated either at full cost recovery or to benchmarks when full cost recovery is not applicable. Next slide, please. The chart on this slide provides a breakdown of the municipal tax levy, the main pressures that's impacting 2026. The net increase year over year is $2.8 million and includes the cost of salary and benefit changes, council-approved funding strategies, and other inflationary pressures based on what we anticipate to spend to deliver city services. A full reconciliation of this can be found within the budget document or page 43 of this evening's agenda. Next slide, please. The capital budget represents planned investments in roads, buildings, infrastructure, facilities, and fleet. The total capital program for 2026, again, is $47.8 million, with approximately 60% going towards roads. In addition to these investments, the capital plan focuses on various fleet renewal strategies to address aging assets, as well as significant investments into various community facilities. And then finally, new to 2026 is the initial investment of city funds towards the relocation of the transit terminal. Thanks to funding opportunities from senior levels of government, the capital plan is nearly one-half funded from outside sources, meaning it's not on the tax levy. This includes funding such as the Canada Community Building Fund, Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, the various housing enabling streams, and the Connecting Link program, of which the city will be recognizing a significant increase in OSIF funding for 2026 and is recommended towards roads initiatives. Next slide, please. This slide provides council a summary of where capital investments are being recommended for 2026. In line with the capital plan presented to council earlier this year, nearly $30 million is recommended to fund roads initiatives. This program includes various resurfacing and reconstruction initiatives, including People's Road Phase 2, Sackville Road, East Street, and Great Northern Road. Significant investments continue to be made in transit while capitalizing on available ISIP funding. Next slide, please. On the screen now is a breakdown of the funding sources of the 2026 capital budget. Much like the operating side, every capital expenditure needs to have the offsetting funding source. Overall, the capital budget is nearly one-half funded from city funds, and then the other half from external funding sources. Initiatives funded from the city side or reserves include the fleet acquisition strategy from Public Works, as well as significant investment into the landfill and associated equipment, as well as various other facility maintenance requirements from the city's asset management reserve. Next slide, please. Looking forward to 2027 and beyond, the capital program is anticipated to be $172 million over the 4 years following 2026. This is using the assumption that the levels of funding remain consistent with what we have in 2026 and previous years. And in the next few years, council should expect additional investments in the landfill, the GFL Arena, Bondar Marina, biosolids, and Public Works fleet, as well as various other roads initiatives. Staff, including the senior management team, are becoming more involved in the capital forecasting process, and this should continue to improve as asset management data continues to be refined. Next slide, please. As in previous years, service level changes are also provided for council's consideration. These items are not included within the preliminary budget or capital budget, either operating or capital, and requires the council's approval to go forward. In total, there are 7 requests for 2026, and as mentioned in the CAO's report, the amount of service level requests have been pared down significantly given the pressures faced for 2026. Next slide, please. Sanitary investments, both operating and capital, are not funded by the tax levy, but by wastewater revenues. The budget for these investments continue to be separated to allow for better decision-making and transparency. Included within the 2026 budget, pages 122 to 130 of this evening's agenda, are the details of both operating and capital expenditures of this 100% user pay budget. Continued investment is being recommended for wastewater treatment plants, the biosolids initiatives, as well as various other linear infrastructure. Next slide, please. The sanitary user fee is calculated as a percentage of water revenue collected and forecasted by PUC. At 80% of water revenues, the total sanitary revenue totals approximately $20.7 million for 2026. And then this revenue is then used to fund both the operating and capital requirements of sanitary. Within the capital program are cash flow estimates of significant capital projects, such as the West End plant and biosolids. And when council approves the sanitary budget, it also approves the projects in total, as well as the appropriate cash flows. Next slide, please. In December, final budget resolutions will be considered by council that will account for any adjustments to either the operating, capital, or sanitary budgets, which will include local and levy boards. Once the tax levy is approved, staff will return in March or April with amendments and recommended changes to tax ratios and tax rates. That concludes our presentation this evening, and we appreciate it.
Welcome to council, Ms. Vecchio.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Each year, public input is a vital part of building a budget that reflects our community's needs and priorities. And as we begin the 2026 budget process, we're encouraging residents to get involved and share their feedback through a variety of options this year. First, our online survey is now live at saultestmarie.ca/budget 2026. Residents can complete it digitally or pick up paper copies at the Bay Street Active Living Center, the Northern Community Center, the North Branch Library, the James L. McIntyre Centennial Library, or right here in the lobby of the Ronald A. Irwin Civic Center. And we're also administering a survey through the city's Flash Vote focus group at flashvote.com/cityssm. Second, we will be hosting a budget open house on November 27th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. right here in the Civic Center lobby. This would be a come and go session, and it gives residents a chance to speak directly with staff, ask questions, learn more about key budget priorities. Residents can also join the conversation online through social media by sharing their thoughts on Facebook or Instagram using hashtag SueBudget and tagging at CitySSM. And to help people better understand how their tax dollars support municipal services, we're also promoting the use of the property tax calculator that's available on the city's website. In addition, residents can reach us directly by emailing their comments and questions to info@cityssm.on.ca. They can call the Finance Department directly at 705-759-5350 or send mail directly to the Finance Department here at 99 Foster Drive. Community participation does strengthen the budgeting process, and it helps ensure that we're investing in the services and priorities that matter most to our community. We do encourage all residents to take part and make their voices heard. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vecchio. Council, the budget is, excuse me, just being tabled today. Questions are on the budget meeting, which is December 8th and 9th. December 8th, I should say, and then the 9th only if necessary. So round up your questions for those days or in advance. But today we do have the police services here. Oh, Madam Deputy Clerk's got a motion to read. Sorry.
I have a motion by Councilors Vezo, Allen, and Scott, resolved that the report of the CAO dated November 17th, 2025, concerning the 2026 proposed budget be received as information.
All in favor? That carries. Our external budget presentations are otherwise going to be next week, but police services had a scheduling conflict next week, so they are here this week to go over their presentations. So, Ms. Kenny, the floor is yours, and welcome to council. Welcome back to council, I should say. And team, and police services team, of course.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm going to make a couple of opening comments first. It's my pleasure to serve as the chair of the Sault Ste. Marie Police Service Board. My name is Nuala Kenny. I'm delighted to be here this evening. We have a presentation for Mr. Mayor and the distinguished members of council and senior staff. Nice to see many of you again. Also joining me tonight is Police Chief Angela David, who is our accountant and does the budgeting and finance and the board, and my friend Lincoln is here to help with the with our actual presentation. Just before we get into the formal presentation, I wanted to take a minute and speak to everyone. You know, this past year has been one of incredible upheaval for Sault Ste. Marie Police Service. That comes as a surprise to no one. 2025, we were gripped very early on in the year with a pretty significant overage in the budget, and it was our challenge to set that ship straight, and that is what we have been doing pretty diligently for almost a year now. The board and staff continue to address that overage, and we do so by introducing a number of changes to how we operate, frankly. Budget is a line item at every single board meeting. Angela is present at every single board meeting. One of the things that we uncovered, you know, when we were trying to figure out how did we get into financial problems, real problem with communication, or maybe the communication was there, but it wasn't a fulsome communication. That is to say, if you have an accountant saying something to you and you don't understand what they're saying, you need to say, what does that mean? So that I can understand it. And I'm happy to report that those are the kind of open conversations that we now have at the Police Service Board. We introduced a number of cost-cutting measures. I'm going to speak about them a little bit in the in our report. And enhanced communication, not just within the board, but externally to the city, frankly. It was a mandate challenge that we really wanted to improve communications, not just at budget, not just to come before you tonight, but an ongoing open dialogue with the city. And we have formalized that in the form of an MOU, but it's form in terms of the communication. From a personnel perspective, Chief Stevenson stepped down. The chair and vice chair of the board also stepped down in sort of record time. And we have seen changes in that we have a new chief who's joining us tonight. He was brought up from the ranks. He's a Sault Ste. Marie person. He's got a Sioux family. He's a police family. We're about to announce the deputy chief, and I can tell you that the same recipe applied to the deputy chief. You're going to see that this is a person that we picked from the ranks, that is a police family, that's got strong connections to Sault Ste. Marie, and we're just delighted with that choice, but you have to tune in to see who that is. If you don't know, it'll be a little bit of a surprise.
Could you just point the mic more directly to your face? The people at home are saying your voice is breaking in and out.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would also say that the police board is almost at a complete complement. In addition to myself, Mr. Mayor, Marcie Bruni, we have Joe Greco, and we just received word that we have our final provincial appointee. I'm not at liberty to disclose who that is right now, but I can tell you it is a young person with a very strong business background and very strong connections to the community, and we're just delighted to have her on board. So I think that'll help make a change just in terms of consistency of the operation. When we were preparing this budget, we've really been preparing it all year. Really, I got on the board in January, and since then, that's one of the things that we've been talking about pretty consistently. We have really adopted the notion of being transparent and having excellent communication. We're going to present tonight a real-world budget. We didn't fudge numbers. This is a no BS budget. So, yeah, you know, the increase that we're looking at tonight as we continue to try and right the ship is a 10.97 increase, not 9.998. We probably could have done that. I expect this is a sophisticated audience, and I expect we have a sophisticated community. Everybody sees through that. So it really is a no BS budget. These are the numbers. That's what it costs to police Sault Ste. Marie. And finally, before we get into the formal presentation, I just want to acknowledge that this is a unique time in history, particularly for policing. We have got record homelessness and poverty issues. We have got an epidemic of intimate partner violence and gender-based violence like we've never seen before. Extremely tech-savvy offenders that are putting our cybercrime units really to the test. We are dealing with the complex epidemic of drug abuse. And I wanted to take this opportunity to say that the staff of Sault Ste. Marie Police Service, both uniform and non-uniform, are brave, dedicated, and a word you don't often hear in policing, compassionate. So I'd like to thank the team, and I'd like to thank my team for being with me tonight. And with that, we have a formal presentation that I'd like to get to. So I've already introduced ourselves. We're going right on to the into what we were hoping to bring to the table. So we're really seeing a new chapter in policing and with the board. We have the new leadership in terms of the chief and the deputy chief, and the new appointees to the board. With this change comes an opportunity to reset priorities, to strengthen partnerships and reaffirm our commitment to transparency, accountability, and modernization. This 2026 budget reflects that new direction. It's built around responsible stewardship, community engagement, and strategic investment. And in many ways, this budget is the first step towards translating that new leadership vision into an operating reality. I can tell you that even when we were interviewing the chief, one of the questions, of course, was about budget, and he said, "I don't expect that I can wave a magic wand and fix this in 12 months. This was a significant overage. It's going to take some time, and we'll continue to chip at the mountain." That's what he's been doing. Our approach to this budget has been complicated, as any budget is. As we heard from Mrs. Schell earlier this evening, there's a projection that one must do. There's a guesstimating, and there's a certain crystal ball gazing that goes on. And we also have the challenge of ensuring adequate and effective policing. That's our pleasure. That's the police service's pleasure to meet, and it's also a statutory requirement. This budget was developed in response to new requirements under the legislation that governs policing, which is the Community Safety and Policing Act. And of course, there's other legislative requirements. But, you know, to touch on some of the things, increases in violent crime, and you know, it saddens me to say it in this room or any room, but the level of intimate partner violence in the community is, it's staggering. So not only are those situations addressed, but they have a very real and empirical effect on the people that attend to those calls, right? We've also strengthened our transparency, as I mentioned earlier, with our communication with the excellent team that you have at City Finance, and with the memorandum of understanding. And, you know, I would just say that that is not my preference to do business through memoranda of understanding. It is my preference that you have a solid communication that it doesn't matter what the contract says, frankly. It was put in place so that we have a cornerstone to look back to. So if the human beings change, as they will, there's still that, this was the intent, this is what we wanted, open communication where the city could ask, and we could ask the city. That's what we were trying to establish. So it wasn't to overly formalize the relationships, which from my lens look very good and very transparent, but it was more sort of future looking, that we would always have that sort of relationship. The budget was prepared by the senior management team. So what does that mean? It meant that the chief sat down with every one of the managers time and again and said, where can you cost cut? Where can you realize some savings? We really need to take this seriously, which is very different, you know? If you think about if you had chosen a policing career, you don't really think about budget. You know, you go into policing because you're interested in crime control. You want a different, you know, sort of a job where you're not sitting at a desk every day. Budget isn't something you think about. They do now. All the police officers do now. It's something that's very much on people's minds. The goal was to balance policing requirements with principles of efficiency and responsibility while maintaining a high standard of service that we expect in this community. We are constantly trying to bridge the gap that occurred in 2024. The total proposed budget that we're looking at for 2026 is just over 44 million. And again, that represents a 10.97% increase, not 9.98, not 10.0, 10.97. That's the real grown-up number. That's what it looks like. Of course, as we heard earlier from the city budgets, the lion's share of that is salaries and benefits. That's about 85% of our total budget. The 15%, the balance, is mostly operating and capital costs. I'm going to go into that in greater detail, but just to give you a little taste, we're going to talk about the body-worn cameras, the in-car cameras, CCTV, things that affect all of us, like fuel charges that have gone up. Well, we've got a fleet of fuel. Food charges, the cost of food and groceries has gone up. Well, we have prisoners that are entitled legislatively to a meal. So we're in the same situation as everyone else in the community. This is a really true costing. It's a no fudge, no BS budget. The overall increase from 2025 to 2026 is just over $4 million, which, as I said, is that 10.9% increase, mostly from salaries. But there are certain things that we had to do as a result of the new legislation. So the Community Safety and Policing Act requires certain things be done. You'll also note, and I'll talk about that as the presentation continues, you'll also note that there is less revenue this year. And that's because we were unable to draw from reserves because we don't have a major capital project. The major capital project of Division 2 is complete. If you didn't realize, but when you take a draw from reserves, that shows as a revenue. You're not going to see that tonight. And the remaining increases are mostly in operating and capital costs that were influenced by things like inflation, technology upgrades, and honestly, we'll speak about it, but the cyber crime is just so sophisticated. It's very hard to get in front of it. And how do you do it? Training, which is money, and technological upgrades, which is money. So we're going to talk about some of these factors now that have influenced the budget, the legislation, crime trends, new technology, what happened with Division 2, salaries, and other benefits. So we'll talk about that in these coming slides. So we'll look at the legislation first. So this legislation, the Community Safety and Policing Act, came into effect in 2024, and it marked sort of major overhaul in policing across the province. And it introduced new requirements for training and for equipment and technology and even duties. All of those have an impact financially. So I'll give you a couple of examples. We're required under the Act to have a Marine unit. And historically, we would have to, go to a private sector and get a Marine unit. We didn't have one. The Marine unit we have now is a boat that we share with the Anishinaabeg Police, which is fantastic. We're right in the heart of the Great Lakes. It's imprudent not to have a Marine unit. Of course, we have to have a Marine unit, but you need training, and it changes the duties that you're going to have if you're on the ship as opposed to if you're on land. There's also technological requirements under the new act. So police officers are required to have these virtual reality headsets to do training, and it's very, very helpful, particularly with mental illness calls, because you can actually play it out without involving a human being. You can use AI, you can use the virtual reality so that you have a better call. And maybe you haven't experienced something like that. This really allows that to take place, but, it's expensive. And I'd also like to talk about the increased use of special constables. Sault Ste. Marie Police always had special constables, but under the Act, we are encouraged to, and do in fact, use the special constables for more than just, say, court duty, which is taking nothing away from court duty. That's also very valuable and very needed. But now we have special constables doing things like actually attending at crime scenes to assist. And we're getting more into sort of what's called a two-tiered policing system, where you have these special constables that are not police officers proper doing some of the legwork. So you're not paying a police officer to do it, you're paying a special constable to do it, but to get to that level where we can have the two-tier, that takes some time and money and training. Take a minute to talk about the trends that we're seeing in policing. We have experienced an increase in complex and high-risk calls for service. That is the only way to say it. So when you get a high-risk call for service, that means you need to do certain things to ensure that it ends peaceably. And it means bringing in often members of the emergency service unit. Sometimes it's a canine unit that needs to come. Sometimes it's negotiators or detectives, forensic identification unit. Sometimes it's people with special skilled in gender-based or intimate partner-based violence. That takes a lot of time, a lot of resources. This year already, 2025, there has been sadly 4 homicides. That there's no way to predict what that's going to look like. And of course, as I'd already sort of referenced, the increase in intimate partner and gender-based violence incidents. So I have a statistic here that as of September 2025, intimate partner violence incidents are up almost 5%, 4.6%, and as opposed to the same period last year. So every intimate partner violence investigation is complicated and heart-wrenching. And our police, I can tell you, have also introduced a follow-up. So very often, if you're called to an intimate partner violence situation, the victim often doesn't want to speak at that time. And police were attuned to that. And they've introduced a new program where they reattend at the property and talk to the victim and say, how about today? How are things going today? How do you feel about it? And very often that generates charges. And the technological or digital component, the technological crime unit, they are increasingly being called upon to analyze data and recover digital evidence. It's just another layer that of technical expertise that's required. So all of this contributes to a growing workload, which we're excited and happy to be a part of and to respond to. We want to do it properly. With regard to the technology, we're going to talk about some of the things that we have. I think they're very interesting. If you don't know about some of the technology that police have introduced, I think you'll find this really cool. I found it very interesting when I was learning about it myself. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the drone system. We have a drone program that began in 2017. If you don't know, they're used for so many cool things in policing: surveillance, crowd monitoring. If there's a very high-risk crime site, rather than sending an officer in, you can have the drone go and look. Also for search and rescue, and we're going to talk about, it was used actually just a few weeks ago for search and rescue in the woods in Sault Ste. Marie, which historically, maybe the person wouldn't have been found, but they were able to find the person without the human resources that you'd always attach to it normally. That's how fantastic drones are. How they operate usually is there's an operator or a pilot, and they take real-time video that, and sometimes it's infrared video, that is fed back either to a control center or to officers on the ground. And then that data is processed and analyzed. So very cool. A lot of people involved, a lot of expertise involved, a lot of training that was involved to get there. Also, beyond these emergency calls, you can sometimes use drones to map collisions and crime scenes. Gives you aerial imagery for investigations, and even to help clear buildings if you're concerned about, such as, that might have an officer at risk or have a bomb scare. But it's really the gist of it is to improve community safety, and it's doing that just beautifully. And the next new area in technology has been the in-car cameras and body-worn cameras. So the police vehicles are outfitted with cameras, and the officers wear a small camera on their uniform. And it really is to help with the public trust, accountability, and transparency. We have a professional standards bureau, so if someone is concerned about the way they have been interacted with police, they can make this complaint. It's about professional standards, and it's how police are disciplined, frankly, internally. Well, we get complaints saying I had this interaction with the police officer and it was very unfriendly, or it was very rough, or very inappropriate, or whatever. Well, with the body-worn camera, we can check immediately. Was it like that? Or did you remember it differently? And it has reduced the number of complaints that have gone forward, but it also, we're doing a better job. we're doing a better job. If you're wearing a body-worn camera, you're just necessarily, going to do a better job. And we've also introduced, happily, just a couple of weeks ago, the CCTV camera system. And it's expected to have a significant impact on investigations and on public safety. And I would say, missing persons, for vehicles that you're looking for, and even vulnerable people that tend to wander or whatever. It'll be very, very, helpful from all of that. But all that technology generates data. And data costs money to process and to understand. And it costs money because a person is going through it at the end of the day. Also, another technological advance that we're realizing is this next generation, or NG911, NG911. This is a result of changes under the CRTC that we are required to have this new digital 911 system. And essentially, what it's going to do is allow people that, yes, you can still call 911, but ultimately you'll be able to text 911. You'll be able to send photographs. You'll be able to send a video of what's going on. So you can imagine circumstances where that would be really, really valuable, really maybe life-saving sometimes. So we're very excited about it. It was delayed. It was supposed to be introduced by this year, but it was delayed, not from our end, but from the CRTC's end. And we are expecting that it's going to make a significant difference, not just to safety, but also to workload for the people that'll be managing it. Our Central Emergency Reporting Bureau and Digital Evidence Management Unit are really going to be taxed when the NG911 is up and fully running, which is just in the very near future. But it is a really important step forward to enhance our ability to respond quickly. And just, you can envision when emergency situations would warrant maybe texting rather than making a phone call. So as the service continues to adopt new technology, the amount of digital evidence that we collect has grown exponentially. So on any day, for example, our police generate about 200 or 300 new videos on any one day of work. So the Sault Ste. Marie Police has a digital evidence management system, which they always acronym down to DEMS, which is responsible for processing that data, preparing the digital evidence. And if you've ever had to process, I know Mr. King has had to process Freedom of Information requests. You see, it's a very time-consuming process that you don't release information that ought not to be released, and that you do release the information that should be released. So there's a lot of training involved in it. Not everything requires a redaction, but the things that need to be redacted must be redacted, or you can really get into a lot of hot water. People's reputations, maybe their health care, maybe can be jeopardized. So it's very important. To do this, we are hiring 2 additional DEMS personnel that will be trained specifically in this area so that they can make sure that the data, I think everyone has an iPhone and said, I don't know what 7/8 of this thing does. That's what we don't want. We don't want to collect this data and say, I don't know, it's in a box over there. It's got to be processed and ready for, in some cases it's for the Crown, some cases it's just a civilian that wants a copy of it, in some cases it's for us to improve operations. The Central Reporting Bureau, that's our 911 communication center, is the first point of contact for anybody calling in. And just to give you an idea about the service calls, if you look January to October 2024, same period 2025. In 2024, there was 29,000 calls for service. Same period 2025, 32,000 calls for service. So it's going up. And that also does not include calls that we get that have been transferred to us from fire or police or ambulance. So there are 4 new 911 communication positions, but they have already been accounted for in our budget. So it's actually just filling those positions. So if you see something in the coming days about, oh, somebody got hired at police, it's not, the money has already been there. It's just actually putting the human beings in those seats. And it's a complicated thing. It takes actually almost a year. It takes 8 months to fully train a new communicator to fill these roles. And we feel very confident that we're going to be ready to have our staff up and ready to use the new system and do so effectively. And then we always like to talk about Division 2, which is at 180 Brock Street. If any of City Council has not had the opportunity to view it, I know they did some touring and it wasn't days that worked for everybody. We'd be happy to tour you again. We're very proud of the location and the actual building itself and what goes on inside of it. And what goes on inside of it is traffic services, the K-9 unit, the Marine unit, and the Central Support Bureau. The Central Support Bureau is the area that takes care of the community safety officers that go into the high schools. But we've also got a community safety officer now going into the elementary school, which is just so fantastic because you're starting with children at such a young age and seeing police officers as somebody that can help, somebody that's part of your community, and that they don't have that sort of, fear of police, that they see a different side to it. So we're just delighted that outreach has happened. Also, of course, as you can imagine, a big obligation for Division 2 is patrolling the downtown core. Sort of proactive for crime prevention, increased visibility, but also relationship building with the agencies that are there and the businesses that are there, and also the people that are just frankly impoverished and just walking on the street. Just increase sort of visibility to see how they can be of assistance. And very often police are a great resource for people that are struggling, just to say, did you know that you can get lunch here? Did you know that you can maybe find shelter in this area? So these types of duties obviously require a lot of officers' times and resources because so many of the calls are not actually criminal in nature. The complete hiring of Division 2 is now behind us, but we have sufficient, I would say very sufficient control downtown with regular patrol coverage because of the officers that are in Division 2. And then the salaries and benefits, which I mentioned earlier, is of course the largest part of our budget. This is largely as a result of, it's not discretionary at all. This is relating back to previously negotiated collective agreement increases. So in the 2026 year, there's probably going to be, you'll see probably about a 2.03 increase in salaries and approximately 1% increase in benefits. This was already negotiated and agreed at in previous labor negotiations. And just a couple of opt-outs that I will mention to you. Of course, we as I mentioned, we feel the pinch of the consumer price index. Like I'd mentioned, the prisoner meals or something, and we have licensing fees for all of the software that we employ. Our rent for Division 2 that I was just so happy talking about. Our rent has gone up in Division 2. We've introduced a peer support program for officers. If an officer goes on leave for any reason, coming back is a bit of a push. And we've introduced this peer-to-peer counseling where you could talk about, I'm nervous about coming back, or I'm going back to that same stressful situation. How am I going to? And the peer-to-peer has really helped with officers who've been away for lengthy absences. It's better than really a formal reintegration. It really helps them get on their feet. We also in 2025 moved to cloud-based in HR and finance systems. So it was sort of a necessary upgrade, improving our cybersecurity, which is always on the front of everybody's mind when you're working in a very confidential place like police. Of course, you want to make sure that you have the best possible cybersecurity available to you. And we're concerned, obviously, about our digital evidence being protected and not being tampered. A couple of decreases. There's no major capital projects planned. Division 2 is what we had, so you're not going to see that transfer from reserve. We had previously a person that was trained in K-9, and we had, I just want to make sure I'm talking about the right thing here. Yeah, that was just really a secondment of a person. So we received money for this person that was doing K-9 patrol for a different agency, but that's finished now, and that's not going on. Otherwise, we continue to scour, Angela in particular, scour for other sources of revenue and grants. She comes to every board meeting, and that's one of the questions I can assure you. Is there new grants? Are you looking? Is there something? Are we eligible? How's the timeline? Because we're eager to get as much revenue as we possibly could. And yeah, that's it. That. So, I mean, I guess I would just say that this is a real budget. It's not baby food. We gave you what we're seeing. The chief went through, as I said, with all the managers to try and get it down, and then the board went through and scrutinized it too. And we truly did have the debate about, would it sound nicer at 9.98? We said, maybe, you know, if you're a child, but it's 10.97. That's what we need for adequate and effective policing. It comes with a lot of hard work, a lot of collaborative effort, and I have my friends with me tonight to help me field any questions that you might have. Thank you very much. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Kenny. I'm not sure anyone else could put that quite as bluntly as you. So with that, we can take questions. Councillor Vezo-Allen.
Through you, Mayor, to Ms. Kenny, thank you so much for a very thorough presentation. We used to only get about 3 or 4 slides and not to the amount of detail. So we certainly appreciate that. Taxpayers really want to know with a budget of this size, but also with the important work that you do, that our police are well-funded and also responsible. Just a few questions, and whoever can answer, jump in. What is the current complement of uniform officers right now?
166.
166? So I know in previous years, there was the assumption that by having more complement, then we would have less overtime. That's the one thing we haven't seen. So sort of like year to date, are we looking at decreases in overtime, or is overtime staying kind of at the same levels as it has maybe, 2022, 2023, 2024 with such a rise in complement?
Well, obviously, we aren't at the end of the year yet. We are seeing some reduction from staffing perspective, but staffing only makes up about 20 to 30% of our overtime yearly. A lot of our overtime is made up through investigative support, which would be our tactical team. That's going to continue. So the overtime, we've tried to set what we feel is a very responsible number. Obviously, $200,000, if we've been at $1 million over the last 5 years, isn't responsible. So our budget this year has a much higher overtime budget set, and we're working towards trying to chip away at that where we can. But obviously, if there's investigations, we have to bring out expertise for those investigations. That's where the majority, probably 70 to 75% of our overtime is spent. Staffing is starting to come down because we are seeing some of those numbers.
If I can just add, I asked the exact same question, like, what's with the overtime? Is it just people? And the explanation was, you get a complicated call, then you have to call out people with different areas of expertise that you weren't expecting. You weren't expecting to do that night. That's where the majority of the overtime comes from.
So is the overtime still pretty much at that $1 million level annually? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. My other question is regarding, and this question has been asked previously, and it's about Division 2, regarding like what is the actual kind of budget, business plan with Division 2. So, there was the jump station at the Station Mall. It was definitely underutilized in terms of, officers doing, work from there. So in terms of Division 2, it's great that you've got, I know Victim Services is there now, but sort of like, what are the hours of Division 2? Do you have to have support staff there? Is it just for, because I believe it is not public facing, public cannot go into Division 2. So if you could just give me a rundown on Division 2 and what Division 2 costs versus, say, having what was in place before as the jump station.
Perhaps I'll let Angela do the financial first, and I can explain the day-to-day operations, if that would work.
Perfect.
Thank you. The jump station at Station Mall Actually didn't cost us a lot of money. It was a point where officers could go to do paperwork and check in. It was not accessible to the public. And fortunately, we had a fantastic agreement with Station Mall for the rent, so it was very cost effective. I would say if I had to guess, it didn't cost us more than $10,000 to $12,000 a year. Division 2 is much more robust, had a greater vision. We do have a proper lease for that building. It has only been open for a portion of the year, approximately 6 months at this point in time. So we don't have a full cost yet, but included in our 2026 budget is just over $500,000 to manage and run Division 2 at this point in time. That's not including any salaries and benefits for the staff that are there.
So $500,000, and that's just to run the Division 2 building, like insurance, utilities,
Correct.
rent, snow shoveling, so zero
Janitorial.
staffing.
Yep,
Okay. Does that include putting in like desks and computers and all that sort of thing?
it's already been done in 2025.
Okay. So in terms of Division 2 at $500,000, is there the plan that it will be accessible to the public, or is it going to stay just for officers to work from and not have any public, for people to be able to go in?
So currently, people can walk in and make file reports. There is a lobby and a duty officer they're working on.
There is, okay.
Day shift. There's a staff sergeant also down there that manages the day shift hours of operation. Our traffic unit works as a combined schedule. Our K-9 unit's working out of there. We do have our alternate response unit is working out there. They work days typically. Our downtown division, so the sergeant and 4 officers, they work days and afternoons at this point. Obviously, the public couldn't walk in after, I think it's 4 or 5 o'clock. But it is open for people to come in and file reports, and that is happening. Obviously, we're often, it's also connections with some of our partners that are within the building. So
Okay.
we manage all those walk-ins for anybody coming to see victim services, Crime Stopper, wants to do an accident report, potentially meet with our traffic unit. So there are also rooms down there for officers to use for interview rooms and some potential down there. We also have our MCERT reporting there at times, as well as our school liaison officers are at this point.
Okay.
Lots of activity down there during the day shifts, and the public can come there during the day.
Okay. So the public can attend to the Division 2
That's correct. During the week,
during the week, Monday to Friday?
Monday to Friday, days, it's either 8 to 4 or 9 to 5. Sure.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Now, has this then eliminated some stress on the Second Avenue building? Because I know there's always been talk about it not being large enough and having some upgrades necessary. So with the addition of Division 2, has that given more longevity and usefulness to the building on Second Line?
We certainly had to move some bodies out of that building. We were the seams kind of, so we diverted some of those units down, which created some space for us. The building is probably a different topic. I mean, it's an older building. It certainly is always looking to have some upgrade done to it. Maintenance is always ongoing there. But yeah, it has relieved some space. We are also offsite with a couple of our other units. Our ID unit and our drug unit are also offsite for those reasons, because we're out of space.
Okay, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vezo-Allen. Councillor Caputo, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Chair Kenny, I just wanted to say this was a really refreshing presentation. It was very nice to have, with a budget ask of this magnitude, it was very nice to have this level of detail. I'd also like to say it was really nice to see a chair presenting the budget this year and being so informed and clearly very involved and supportive of the officers and the service. So thank you for that. It was a long presentation, but you had my attention the whole time. I liked it. With that being said, I just have some questions about Division 2 as well. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to probably Chief Duguay, Division 2, you said is 8 to 4 or 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. I did notice in our budget presentations that police are endorsing the ask for downtown security. And I'm wondering how we were hoping, I think, that we would not require downtown security as much. having Division 2 down there. So can you sort of give us an explanation of the need for additional security on top of having Division 2?
Certainly. So 8 to 4 and 9 to 5 is public access. So there's people in the
sorry.
building, yeah, beyond that. With regards to security, we have 4 officers and a sergeant there doing foot patrol, bike patrol. So that's 2 officers and they for a day shift, 2 for an afternoon shift. Obviously, it's a big downtown. We spend a lot of time at some of the community partners in the high risk areas. CRC is an example, walking the beat, the boardwalk. So for us, until we get our complement up on the number of officers, which we're looking at to do in the new year, is add some officers to that unit that's focused on the downtown foot patrol and the downtown kind of the enforcement section of it. Obviously, all our officers, when they have the opportunity to get downtown and be visible, we encourage that. However, the unit assigned to that is only 4 officers and a sergeant at this point. So the downtown foot patrol, I think, just adds another layer of security and another layer of comfort to the individuals in the downtown. So I don't think the police are ever going to be, we get one call, that's 2 officers tied up for 2 or 3 hours. They aren't able to, be as visible as they like to be because they're out of call. So we certainly encourage, I don't think you're ever going to see the police taking over all that role downtown because the numbers just aren't there. And we make an arrest, you're up at the station booking somebody in, that all takes time. So you're off the road for those periods.
Okay, and is Division 2 in close contact with the security companies for downtown?
We get reports from, I believe it's Mr. Lammy, but I think I'm not directly involved with that, but I think Sergeant McFarland from our unit has discussions, and we certainly see the reports in the high risk kind of areas they identify, and we try and divert our patrols to those areas.
Okay, thank you. You did say that you're hoping to increase the complement in officers for downtown in January. That's part of this budget?
So those officers have already been hired, but yes, we're going to.
Okay, great. Good. And then just one further question. We mentioned the 2-tiered policing system, and there was a comment there that hopefully that was going to bring some costs down in using the special constables. Do you think that there is a timeline on when we could potentially see that system sort of working in our favor, where we're maybe going to see some costs come down?
Ultimately, that is what we're going to see, is that it's going to reduce costs. But to get the people trained and frankly, to get the right people, because it takes a special person to want to be a police officer or a special constable, but I'm going to say like a 2-year window, I think we were thinking.
So some of the duties we're talking about are crime scene security, for example, prisoner escort. We would often, as Mr. Espino would know, we'd often send 2 police officers away if we had to take a prisoner. Now we send potentially on a security risk 1 officer, 1. So you're going to see small increments. You still have to pay a salary to the special. It's not huge savings, but it also frees up an officer to be out patrolling while that special is sitting on a crime scene potentially. They aren't often working alone. They are doing some beat patrol and bike patrol with our officers in the downtown. So it's just increased visibility. They aren't obviously a primary officer. They're not going to be out making arrests by themselves. But you'll see, the savings is going to be huge, but the time that officers have now to go do other calls, that space for them is.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions. I'm just hoping that with an increase of this size that maybe we're going to get things in line where they should have been and not have that deficit, and maybe see things even out in the years to come. So thank you for the presentation.
Councillor Caputo, Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Kennedy, and the rest of the team for presenting tonight. And yes, definitely have a lot of slides telling the story. First question, just want to continue on with my colleague's question regarding the overtime. Maybe you did answer it, but I just want you to reiterate, how are you going to come back overtime over the next year to 2 years?
My answer to that is simply, we're obviously always cognizant of where we're spending our money. The overtime is spent, but the truth of it is, it's difficult to manage overtime because it is a direct result of the calls we're taking, the calls. So staffing, I mean, having the additional staffing will reduce some of that 20 to 30%. The staffing, we're starting to see some of that now. Obviously, we are always reviewing processes, but yeah, we have 4 homicides. We're calling it a tactical team, a forensic team, ident team, there's people that are getting called out. They obviously work days and afternoons, but things don't always happen. So we're cognizant of how we spend the money, but we're not going to obviously jeopardize an investigation what we're trying to do on that.
Okay. And I know in the past we talked about, unfortunately, police officers, it's a very stressful job. They have their own, unfortunately, PST and so forth. Where do we stand right now and how many officers are off on long-term leave or just dealing with their own stress because of the job? Where do we stand? Do we have 2 off, 5 off? Is that being reduced and so forth?
I just want to caution that we're not going to talk about specific ailments people off.
Yeah, I'm not asking for that, but we also know it's a very stressful job and we appreciate them.
Is their knee sore, right? Some of the
Currently, it's between 8 to 10%.
8 to 10%. Okay. And have we seen that number pretty much consistent at 8 to 10% for the last 3 to 4 years? Have we seen it change?
It has increased over the last 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say it's held steady for maybe the last 6 to 8 months, but we have been seeing it increasing from year to year.
Okay. And I know you as a team are concerned with that and you're probably implementing some programs to help the overall team.
Correct. We have a robust reintegration program. As Chair Kenny said, we have a peer support program. We have a new EAP program that is geared a little bit more to police officers, not just the general public. We recently were introduced to a program called Warrior Health, which is through the province, specific to first responders. So all officers have free access to those resources, which could include counseling, sleep therapy, anything that they need. That also includes a grant that we've received this year to roll out some of those services. We don't know if that's going to continue, but the vast majority of the services for officers themselves are free.
Okay, thank you. And extension to their families, I hope, as well.
Correct.
Okay. Can you comment on the police college? Where do we stand with the police college? Are we still receiving basically new recruit students coming in? And are they coming in on like almost like a placement, like I call it like the nurse, like preceptor, the students?
So we haven't asked for any spots at police college because we knew where our complement was. We will likely in the new year be looking to start creating a pool again with retirements, potential retirements, and some secondment opportunities that we see in the future. We'll likely have to start doing some hiring again in the new year. We're obviously not going to be doing that until we get to the number that we're approved for here through the budget. So we haven't been asking for spots essentially. Police colleges, they're still very busy. They actually created a second police college in the Cornwall area. We've seconded an officer down there as an instructor just to help meet our commitment and offset some salary there. But so it's still high demand for the college. We don't know what those numbers will be. And certainly we haven't been asking for them because we'd just be eating up spots that another service could have. So once we get to a point where we feel we're going to start losing officers through either retirement, we'll have to start a pool for that, which will be in the new year likely. And then hope by mid-year we may be back into hiring and depending on how many officers that are capable to leave. I think we have 11 or 12 officers that are eligible to retire. If any of those go, we'd have to start placing them at some point.
Okay, thank you. Just a few other questions. We'll see what happens with the federal budget tonight, but there's probably a very good chance likely that'll be passed. And just doing some reading, it's my understanding our Prime Minister has outlined more than once that Canada's new government is very keen on making sure our communities are safe, which is a positive. And it's been cited that he's interested in putting more money towards policing, especially with the RCMP. Is there, or are you currently working in cooperation with our local, even though it's small, our local RCMP office to combat some of the crime that we see in our community? Is there any way that we can create a joint strategy plan? Is there any way that we can prevent any duplication and maybe be more efficient in our policing to help with our budget?
So yeah, So yeah, certainly there is always opportunities to work with our policing partners. I know with the new border integrity kind of initiative, we've been out in the boats, we've been on their boats, we've had some, but their operations are very specific typically. Obviously they're geared at a federal level, and as border integrity has kind of taken the priority since the Trump administration came in and we started trying to secure the border. So we're always open to those opportunities. We've worked, in the past, my past career as a police officer, we actually worked a great deal with the RCMP and the OPP and Joint Force Operations. They've had some members seconded to our drug unit, things like that. So those are certainly things. I think their numbers are at a point right now where they have their hands full trying to secure the border between here and Thunder Bay. So, but we will certainly, put the hand out and work in partnership with them. I know when they've asked for assistance, or OPP, same thing, we'll always provide it, and vice versa. So it's great kind of working relationship here in the north. As OPP or RCMP specifically, I know they've got their hands full up here right now with, and APS has a great relationship with us. As we said, the sharing of the boat, and we provided support for them in the past as well. So, so we are working. There's I think we share drug unit, we share an office with a couple of OPP members as well. So there's great information sharing. We're part of CISO, which is intelligence sharing. So those partnerships are there. They're not necessarily always formalized, but there's certainly a closeness just from geography and from the relationship policing that we work closely with our partners here.
Okay. If we're sharing the boat, do we need to continue on with our marine unit for 2026? Can we not put that on a hold when you just said that we're sharing the boats with these other partners?
We're required to have access to a boat. So as marine unit will continue on forever. We may be asking for a boat, our own boat someday, but right now, through the kindness and generosity of the APS, they're allowing us to share their boat with them, so we can each put an operator out and manage them, so some of the waterways and more effectively. So I don't have to have the expense of my own service and walking fees at this.
Okay. And two other questions. You talked about partnerships. I know you have a strong partnership with social services. Can you comment on, in the units, the policing cars, do we still have the, I still say nurse or the specialized individual to help with the homelessness, the discussions and so forth? Is there still that individual that travels around?
Correct. I think you're probably speaking with our MCERT unit, which was mental health kind of support unit.
Correct.
We are still part of that program with the Sioux Area Hospital. We do have them in the cars. We kind of changed the model, so those officers have been returned back to patrol services. So when the nursing, I want to say nurse, but it's not a nurse. It's a specialist is with the officer. They can take other calls as well. And we've expanded kind of the training across our patrol services. So now instead of having one officer assigned to that unit, we have 2 or 3 officers on a platoon that would all be able to have that kind of education and training.
Okay. You mentioned with the Sioux Area Hospital, is there an opportunity, have you looked into receiving some type of funding from the healthcare side, since this is not, you alluded to it, not really policing, it's a mental health. Is there any way that we can seek some more funding for this program that is not directly from the municipality, potentially from the province, that can help with these costs?
We do currently receive funding from the province for that unit in particular. It's been ongoing funding for the last, I want to say 8 years now. We don't anticipate that funding ending. It's a very important unit. We created it, I believe we were one of the first units in the province to have a unit like that. So we've kind of been the model for other police services. So yes, we do receive funding for that unit.
Okay, that's good to know. And with regards to policing costs, I know that a lot of the outlying townships are saying that OPP costs are on the rise, and we talked about that as a council. And some other townships have been lobbying to the province to say we need some more financial support with policing costs. I know that all 3 of you have been working, I believe, with AMO on trying to say that policing costs is on the rise. Are you able to give us an update on how we are doing with advocating on policing costs with the province?
I'll let you know next week.
Yeah.
From a conference where we'll be pitching. We're not the only animal at the trough. Everybody's singing the same song, but yes.
Okay, good. And my final question, in your budget, you mentioned, just looking at my questions, basically it's great to hear that the the team, all of you, and the entire team is still working on many of the initiatives that were started several years ago, such as drones, such as the cameras. And I and several of us sit on the speed task force. And we have the privilege of having two officers come to our meetings, and they talk about the cameras on the cars, and it helps to look at expired tags. And from the expired tags, they're able to pull individuals over, and sometimes it leads to more crime resolutions. My point is, can you comment on how you are going to help with speeding? It is such an important piece, and I don't think I saw anything on the budget where you're going to allocate any particular more money towards speeding. Are you staying with the same number of officers? Do you have any thoughts on the speeding portion?
We've actually increased our traffic unit by 1 officer this year. That officer will spend time in the traffic unit as well as be our main drone operator. So yes, we understand speeding is an issue. There's obviously some it's in the media these days. It's not exactly being well supported by the provincial government, but there's certainly some other avenues we can look at as far as speed control. And I think there may be some funding coming from the government with regards to some alternative speed control. We're out there writing tickets, and once again, it's you stop a car, takes you 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to write the ticket. 30, 40 cars have gone by speeding while you're writing the ticket. So visibility slows people down for a little bit, but I mean, it's obviously only has so much of an effect. So yes, we have added to a traffic queue. We see that, you know, the number of accidents are up, and the number of, unfortunately, speed is probably a factor in some of those accidents. So we are turning our mind to try and be more enforceable.
Okay. Glad to hear you're having another officer. That's great. And it sounds like you are supporting speed cameras. It's too bad that that's gone to the side of the table. Maybe it'll come back. But I'm using this opportunity to provide you the opportunity to talk about speeding. And my questions are just to allow you to educate the public on what work you are doing around this important topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Spina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No questions, just a short comment, if I may, at this time. Yep. You know, I don't think this council ever wants to see someone come forward with a $4.3 million increase to their budget. And you have a completely new board, you have a completely new administration, and you've tackled an insurmountable task and presented today what I think is the most clear, concise, and transparent budget I personally have seen in years. I don't think that we have seen anyone come to council in the last several years as fully informed as you have today, and fully transparent to present to us as you have today. In fact, I would say in years past, we've asked questions and just been told, we'll get back to you, we'll get back to you, we'll get back to you. Not once today did we hear that. And in fact, I think you answered a lot of our questions before they were ever asked. I know it's not an easy thing to bring forward, but I know that each of you actually came here today and fully owned what this is. And I personally will tell you, I feel much more comfortable today than I have in years past seeing what you've presented today and seeing the manner in which you've presented it. I would suggest that this is a model for people to follow. And I do want to thank you for the hard work you've done and for coming here today fully informed, fully aware, and fully ready to stand behind this budget. So thank you for that. And that will be all my comments today, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spina. Councillor Zagordo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few, or one question basically on the numbers. And I appreciate your presentation. It was very informative and a lot of information. Just about the increase, as you know, we are responsible to the taxpayers. And so seeing a 10.9% increase, you know, is kind of jaw-dropping. And not for this budget alone, but for future budgets. So my question is, of the 10.9%, is that solely for the budget for next year, not including the 2024, I guess for the sake of argument, calling them mishaps, or monies that we owed on that?
So the 2026 budget is a true reflection of what 2026 will cost us. 2024 is in the past. 2025 is soon to be in the past. We've brought the budget up in 2026 to be as transparent as we possibly can. We're basically setting a new baseline with a new board and with new administration. So this is where we sit now. This is where we feel policing provides adequate and effective policing. And going forward, we'll do our best to make sure that those things don't happen.
I guess what makes me nervous about this is if it's just solely the one budget for operating for 2026, can we expect a 10% or even greater amount in years come?
Well, once again, this is an estimate on our part. I mean, at the end of this, there's going to be a new contract coming up in 2020 into 2026. What that will look like, I don't know. That'll have to be negotiated. So to speak to what the future is going to look like, I know that this budget reflects kind of what we need to operate the police service this year. But again, it's an estimate, no different than the people who shovel the snow. So what I will promise you is that if there's going to be overages, you'll know, the board will know about it well in advance. There won't be surprises at the end of the year. We will certainly do our best to remain within this budget because we do feel it's fair and necessary. And we will work with the board to ensure that information has been passed to the city so that, and that's built right into the MOU that we have. So those conversations are happening. 2026 or 2027, I'm sorry, will be another budgets, and there'll be certainly some discussions with regards to what that's going to happen.
You know, if I can just color that in a little bit too, you know, yeah, it's a staggering amount of money. It is. We're right in step with other police forces. I just have these notes here that Greater Sudbury is requesting a 12.6% increase, North Bay 7.6. So for our population, yeah, it's a staggering amount of money, but it's in step with what we're seeing in other policing to stay current.
I guess my final question would be, in terms of 2024, then are we, or is your budget at zero? Have those costs been covered if we're only looking at 2026 budget?
I'm actually going to have to defer to Mrs. Shell on that one.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Zagordo, the city is responsible for funding the police operations. So if there is a deficit, and as there's going to be in 2025 that we're projecting, then the city has to come up with the funds for it. So when we presented our Q3 report, we indicated that we would be looking into our contingency reserve to cover this cost.
Perhaps I'm understanding the question a bit differently, and I think I understand what you're trying to get at, Councillor Zagordo, and I'll allow the chief and Ms. Kenny, Chair Kenny, to fill in the blanks on this. But the 2026 proposed increase corrects a number of areas that were underfunded in the past that created the deficit. So things like overtime in 2024 and 2025 were budgeted at $200,000 when the actuals were a lot closer to $1 million. The 2026 budget has it at
900,000.
So if there is a deficit, it is unlikely to be in that area. So I don't think going forward, you're going to have those same issues that resulted in the deficit in 2024 and 2025. Ms. Kenny, is that a good read on things?
I don't think I could have said it as bluntly.
Okay, thank you. That answers my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Zagordo. Councillor Dufour?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My colleague, Councillor Zagordo, presaged some of my questions. Maybe I'll put it a little more specifically. Do we have a more up-to-date number on the projected 2025 deficit tonight, or is it still the Q3 number that council last received?
Correct. We have a board meeting on Wednesday. We'll have an updated number at that point in time. As far as the city's Q3 results that they presented, that still stands.
Okay, but there will be an updated number on Wednesday reported to the board? And then, for our...
Sorry, just having the benefit of being on both governing bodies, I think the Q3 results showed 1.3 million from our perspective. And then we had a finance committee meeting, but that's not at the board yet. Is that correct? Got you. Okay.
That is correct.
So that'll be Tuesday, Wednesday.
And to Michelle's point, whatever that number ends up being by December 31st, that will be funded by city's reserves, correct? And, okay, so that's what I wanted to know. In terms of my comments, I do want to echo what other councilors have indicated. This is the most fulsome budget presentation that I've ever received, and I've sat through 7 of them now. So seeing a full line-by-line budget is something that I do personally appreciate. Your bluntness with the amount of money is also appreciated. It is a staggering amount of money. It's a staggering amount of increase. You know, folks, they tend to look to us when it comes to the whole number. And with a year like this year, you know, police services accounts for, you know, the vast majority of the increase on the table. And so I appreciate you guys coming here and owning that and giving us some good solid reasons why that is, and for showing the numbers and the homework for exactly what we're getting for that. I appreciate it, and I think the community appreciates it as well. To the point of all the questions, and to Mr. Mayor's comments, it seems to me, looking at this budget, that we are coming out of, you know, probably pretty close to a decade of reliance on deficit spending to balance the budget for police services. Would you say that's probably pretty accurate?
I've only been here for the 1 year, and it was kind of quite a year.
I don't know if I can remember a year where police services didn't have some kind of deficit at year end in all my time on council. And I think, to me, what this budget does is as the mayor indicated, is it catches us up and hopefully is going to act as a proper baseline to ensure that if there are overages, they're identified early, strategies are put in place to mitigate early, and those overages, by all reasonable accounts, should be at a lower level than what we've seen now. And so I hope that's the case going forward, you know, and so we can hopefully expect more increases in line with, you know, new collective agreements and things like that, but not on top of deficit spending years.
That's the aim, that's the hope. I can make you a promise that the communication will be open and immediate. So we can predict so far that's everybody's mandate, is to cost cut, look for other sources of revenue, be cognizant right down to the rank and file. But we have 4 homicides. Intimate partner violence has gone skyrocketing, but you'll know about it. You will not be in a position where you're reading in one of the newspapers, oh my goodness, police have done this. That won't happen. Well, with this board, this chief.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you,
Appreciate your
Councillor.
time.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. Councillor Gardy.
Councillor Dufour asked the question that I asked, so thanks, Councillor Dufour. That I was going to ask. Thanks, Councillor Dufour. Yeah, Ms. Kenny, it was a refreshing approach that you took. It was transparent. It was accountable. Things that we had been longing for in previous years. So to the new chief, thank you. To your team, thank you. And we look forward to working with you moving in the future. To the public, the cost of policing is expensive, and it's going to continue to be expensive. And I think they outlined a number of the reasons as to why the public should expect increases over the course of the next number of years. But I'm comfortable that there's some parameters in place in the personnel to see that it's not exorbitant more than it has to be. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Gardy. Other councillors, questions? Ms. Kenny, when you took the reins at the police board, you promised a new era of transparency, and I think you have delivered on that promise. Thanks in large part to the hiring of Chief Duguay, who is aligned in lockstep with you on that commitment to transparency. And the, new board, new budget, new baseline, new boss that are being presented here tonight, I think are a true reflection of what it costs to police our community. And the community is better off for the knowledge that we've got from you today on filling in why those costs are what they are. So thank you to all of you. I know Ms. Davey, not been a particularly easy year on from an accounting perspective. So thank you for the work on this, the 2025 year that is ongoing, and on prepping the 2026 budget for a better outcome as well by December 31st next year. So onward with it. Thank you. Madam Deputy Clerk.
So we have an adjournment motion for the budget portion of the meeting, and then we'll move into regular. So I have a motion by Councilors Dufour and Scott, resolved that this council shall now adjourn.
All in favor? All right, I will call the next meeting to order. We've got an adoption of minutes, Madam Clerk.
I have a motion by Councilors Vezu Allen and Gardy, resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting of November 3rd, 2025 be approved.
All in favor? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have Madam Clerk, Deputy Clerk.
I have a motion by Councilors Dufour and Scott, resolved that the agenda for November 17th, 2025 City Council meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? That carries. Brings us to consent. Council, any questions on consent? Seeing none, Madam Deputy Clerk.
I have a motion by Councilors Dufour and Scott, resolved that all the items listed under date November 17th, 2025, agenda item 7, consent agenda, be approved as recommended.
All in favor? That carries.
We have one bylaw. And I'm just going to. I don't know.
No.
Okay.
Are there questions on the bylaw? No.
No, okay. I have a motion by Councilors Kinnick and Scott, resolved that bylaw 2025-161, being a bylaw to declare the city-owned property, and I'm going to just suggest Civic 746 Schaefer Avenue, the pin is there for your reference, as surplus to the city's needs, and to authorize the disposition of the said property be passed in open council the 17th day of November 2025.
All in favor? That carries. Might be legally the shortest council meeting we've ever held.
And we've already dealt with close, so I'll move to the adjournment, and I have a motion by Councilors Vezo Allen and Scott, resolved that this council now adjourn.
Any debate on this matter? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries.